guys, welcome back to another episode. It's been really great this year to be able to talk to you about different ways that you can participate in ocean conservation. And so I'm mostly excited about this episode because it's one that I've been really wanting to do for a while. Me and Alex have talked about the ways in which your passion for ocean conservation and environmentalism really does need to segue into advocacy, activism, and policy so that we can make that meaningful change that all of us really want. We sit down with Doorae Shin. She's a friend of mine, a colleague. We work together on Hawaii Visitor Green Fee, which is ambitious local policy campaign. But I've gotten to know her over the course of the last few years professionally, and I am just continuously so impressed by the ways that she shows up in the world. And I knew she needed to be a guest for like almost a year ago. So we're going to talk about ways that you can sustain your activism, ways that you can translate that into advocacy, ways to plug in when you're starting beyond just voting, and also how she has shown up as an activist her entire life. Whether it's been for single-use plastic bans, which she was part of passing one of the most comprehensive single-use plastic bans in the nation in Hawaii just a few years ago, or her journey from when she started as a student. And so regardless, I think that every single person who is part of our community here needs to hear this episode. It's for the people who don't understand why politics are important, or for the people who love the ocean and want to study the ocean, but also want to save it and don't know how. This episode is for you. I have learned in just the last year and a half that all roads do lead back to policy, and it can be overwhelming to plug into that side of environmentalism, but this episode is going to help it feel a little less overwhelming and also just teach you how many incredible badass women are just doing it. So welcome back to Sustainability in the Sea. Welcome, Doorae, to Sustainability in the Sea.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you're on here just because we've been working together for what, like 2 years now, and everything I learn about you, I get really, I'm like surprised and also not surprised because of how much you've done in your like growing professional career.
Yeah, we're kindred spirits, so you're very similar in that way.
Okay, I met you, I think originally you were with Surfrider, but I also saw from your bio and just knowing what you were doing before that you actually started your environmentalist journey in college, right? You were part of a styrofoam ban. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a little bit before that. I'm actually born into an activist family. So my parents were
Oh,
really involved with stuff. So when I was growing up, I was kind of exposed to that a lot. And I think it planted a lot of seeds for me that I wasn't aware of. But in terms of my environmental activism, it did start at University of Hawaiʻi. And I came out here in 2010, and coming from the East Coast, I saw a lot of styrofoam, and plastic. And for some reason on the East Coast, it didn't bother me. It just felt like normal. But in Hawaii, it really bothered me. It just felt like this is a paradise. And I think a lot of people come here assuming that we have all of these environmental rules and regulations in place. And so for me, it was kind of like, well, one, like, why? It's not necessary. There's alternatives. And two, this is paradise. We should do what we can to protect it. And so I got together with a few students. I found the Surfrider UH Club and proposed us doing a styrofoam ban. And they were like, we don't really do that stuff, but we'll try. We usually just cleanups. And we kind of found the people at UH, like the staff and people, and we essentially started a petition. It was an online petition, and we had it go to the chancellor,
wow.
who actually at the time we were really lucky that he had prioritized sustainability as part of his leadership. And so the timing was just really ripe for something like this to be attempted. And, within 4 months, there was some, process things, but within 4 months, a policy had been passed through our efforts that banned all styrofoam from being used for food service vendors on campus. and it went into effect over the next few years. And so that was in 2014. So it's been almost 10 years now that policy has been in place. And if you think about Manoa as the flagship university for the state of Hawaii, I think there's about 20,000 students, undergrad and graduate, that go there, and staff and all of that. It has a really huge impact. And, now, a couple years ago, styrofoam and a lot of other single-use plastics were banned through our efforts at Surfrider. So it took a lot longer than I thought it would take us, but it was kind of a short-term thing that happened, and then it turned into a long-term goal for Hawaii.
Wow. So wait, that was all one school year for the styrofoam ban?
Yeah, it was like a December of 2013. We started the petition and then had winter break. And then in April, we just were really focused. Like, I was coordinating meetings with staff, faculty, students. And, we had a professor, Robert Perkinson, he wrote the policy. And then we kind of had a back and forth with the administration, and they're like, oh, let's just make this optional. And we're like, no, that's not what a policy is. And then they were like, all right, we'll just accept it as is. Because again, the chancellor was really friendly at the time. And so I think it's a really good story around timing. Like, as activists, we do lose a lot, but sometimes the timing, it's just right. The person in power, they're ready, and something that maybe wouldn't have passed before or didn't pass before. It's just the right moment for it.
Yeah. Wow. That's also really motivating for students to just see their efforts come to fruition, and say, the people you worked with, maybe that was their first entryway to activism, right? And they're like, wow, we started with a win. Like, that's extremely motivating for their entire environmentalism journey.
Yeah. And you need those victories to just keep you in the work.
Keep going. Okay. I don't know why I thought you were from Southern California. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Pennsylvania. Oh. I don't know why. My parents just immigrated there. It was really random. From outside of Philly. So I was born and raised in the suburbs of Pennsylvania, and took my high school graduation as an opportunity to go to college far away and somewhere warm. So it just, it just turned out to be Hawaii, and it's been really amazing for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. And you mentioned it was an activism family. Was it specifically environmental activism or all forms of activism? Because I know now you work with projects that, help the environment, but also some that also focus on like mental health and people and things like that.
Yeah, no, they were in a group called Young Koreans United, which is now a different organization names. But at the time it was, Koreans in their 20s and 30s, a lot of them who had immigrated here and wanted to work on Korean American issues. They worked on immigration issues and kind of social justice work as it related to Asians and Korean Americans.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So then you grew up in a household where they were like, yeah, when you see a problem, you do your part to help, make it a little bit better.
Yeah. And I think, oh my God, they were like my age. We have kids a lot later, I think, in our generation, but they were all at my age. And I had all these aunties and uncles all around me that were spending all their time outside of work, planning these demonstrations and organizing these actions. And I do think it was really powerful for any kid, any young person who's a sponge, to be exposed to that and realize, like, wow, you can make a difference. You won't always win, but you can, and it's going to feel good, and you'll have a community of people with the same values, and how important that is to gather in that way.
Yeah, I feel like you're so good at staying motivated during the losses. And maybe that's because with advocacy and activism, like, you do tend to have more losses than wins. But do you think that was a learned behavior, or do you think you've always been like on the optimistic side, where you're like, oh, well, we'll just get up tomorrow and get back at it again?
My philosophy is that you might as well be optimistic, because if I put myself in the place of like, okay, we failed, right? Like, just imagine that you fail, but you look back and you're like, well, at least that whole time I was happy and like everyone was happy and we weren't expecting the worst. I think it just means when you're optimistic that you'll be happy throughout your life, even if things don't work out. So for me, it's more of like a self-preservation strategy than it is like really believing it's always going to work out. And I think when you are an activist or you're in any kind of difficult work, that you just get used to it. It's kind of like rejection therapy. You just learn that you're going to get a lot of no's, and the more no's you get, the more yes you're going to get overall too. So I think just the motivation to keep trying and to not take things personally and not get angry. And I kind of, as you know, like over the years, you learn the system, you know, you learn the system, you start to become friends with people in power, and you start to see them more as people and what really influences them. And how to be more strategic. And so I think coming from that young activist place where you're more angry and impatient, you mature as an activist, and you start to be more kind of intentional and strategic about your work, you know, calling people out less and calling them in more, and grow your relationships rather than burning bridges. And that's an investment too, especially if you're planning on staying in one community, to really make sure that your network is growing and your influence is growing over time rather than shrinking. So I think that's just different approaches that different activists could take.
Yeah, I was really angry when I was 19. Like I was like
Same.
staple angry, yelling, anti-government vegan, like straight
Like,
up.
hurry up,
Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
goodness.
not moving fast enough, you know,
Yeah.
not doing anything.
And what's great is it always comes from a place of passion, and like, which just needs to be harnessed in a way that can be a little bit more productive and constructive. So you obviously had that incredible win early on in your career with the styrofoam ban on the UH campus. And then you went and got involved in a more widespread single-use plastic ban for Hawaii. Were you already with Surfrider, and could you share like the early years of that? I learned about it when it was already about to be passed. And so what was the beginning of that journey like for you, and building community and kind of figuring out how you were going to even tackle something this big at a state level?
Yeah, and I think the preface to you know, so the styrofoam ban happened in 2014, and then in 2019 is when we passed that big single-use plastic ban for the island of Oahu. And what led up to that, you know, there's kind of like a 5-year window there, was that there was really, and even prior to that, that's just really when I was involved, but even prior to that, there was kind of this movement that was growing of advocates from Surfrider, you know, Sustainable Coastlines, Zero Waste Oahu, and many others. And we really became a kind of like a close group of friends and colleagues, because we're all working on the same issues. We're all really focused on preventing plastic pollution, not because we were doing cleanups, right? But it's like, you know, you can only clean up so much. It's just like a reactionary activity. And so we were all in the same philosophy of, yes, we're going to keep doing cleanups. We're going to keep doing this work, but we need to work on prevention. We need to work on plastic bans. We need to really stop things at the source and change the culture around waste and single-use plastics. And so, you know, when 2019 came, there was kind of already this group. And so when the city council here the council member Joey Manahan had introduced this bill that was really a comprehensive single-use plastics ban, like one that we hadn't even thought to introduce because it just seemed like there wasn't the political will for it. We all rallied behind it, and over, I think it was like a 5 or 6 month process in that case, where we had a group chat. It was like 8 or 9 of us in this group chat that were really like the leaders behind getting this bill passed. And it was called Bill 40. It was pretty popular at the time in 2019, right before COVID. And, you know, in that 5 or 6 month process, there was a lot of drama and a lot of industry BS and misinformation being spread through a lot of the news networks and the conservative radio and stuff. But, you know, we did win, and the youth were involved, and there was just like a lot of amazing energy around that. And so when it passed in November of 2019, it was one of the most comprehensive single-use plastic bans in the nation. And I think, you know, before that, there was a few comprehensive single-use plastic bans. And after that, there's been a lot as well. And, you know, it's just exciting to know, again, like with the timing and with the movement, like knowing you really can succeed. You just need a small group of passionate people and the right timing and the right people in power. There's a lot of different factors, but
It's
to see it.
Was there like a timing did you have a champion legislatively, politically, that helped contribute to how it was good timing for this? Because there was a groundswell of support to ban single-use plastic, but then there was political will as well, which helped bring it all together, right?
Yes. So the story I always tell is that it was amazing. We had all the right people. The youth skipped school and came, and they did all these incredible things to convince the council members. But really, this is kind of the foundation for why we were even able to pass it. Because for many, many years, we were trying to pass a styrofoam ban or other similar bans at the city level. And we just couldn't get anywhere because the chair of the sustainability committee continued to defer it. And at the time, it was council member Carol Fukunaga. And she was the chair. And for whatever reason, small business, whatever the things she was saying, she killed all of those bills year after year after year. And so it's kind of just like at a certain point, you're like, well, this isn't working.
Yeah.
We can't keep trying to move it through this committee. And so what had happened that year was there was a special election because in the kind of like Hawaii Kai Kahala district of Oahu, Trevor Ozawa was the incumbent council member, but Tommy Waters was running against him, and they had run against each other multiple times. And the election was always very close. But Trevor Ozawa was, more of the business. He wasn't really friendly to our issues, in summary. And Tommy Waters was. He was more of an environmentalist and a waterman and a champion in that way. And so their election was so close. I think it was, 50, 100 votes. It was just so close that I think one of them took it to the Hawaii Supreme Court, and they said, you got to do a special election, which meant everyone in that district got mailed another ballot, and they just had to do it all over again. They had like a little mini campaign, super fast. And then what the outcome of that was that Tommy Waters won by about 1,000 votes. And so he, takes over Trevor Ozawa's seat. And then he becomes the chair of a committee. And it was like the public safety committee. And so when that bill was kind of in action, there was a strategy that we would route the bill through that committee because we knew that that was a friendlier committee than the sustainability committee. So even though it wasn't an intuitive committee to put the bill through, it was routed through this committee that had a friendly chair. So at least the bill can move past that committee, hopefully, and go to a vote by the full city council, which I believe is what democracy should look like. Every important issue that the people care about should at least be able to be heard by the full governmental body that's considering it. And so that's really why we were even able to think about having a victory, is because we were able to get the bill moving past a difficult chair. And you see that at all levels of government. Difficult chair has so much power, and there's been Civil Beat articles and other articles written about this. But how do we have more of a democratic process beyond a chair that's just going to be difficult, or they're bought out by whatever industry, or they have their own personal opinion about something, and they're going to wield that power in an unhelpful way. And so that's one lesson from the Bill 40 plastic ban fight.
Wow. And wasn't it was a health committee, right? So it was single-use plastics were still, the bill was written in a way that talked about the ways it impacts our health, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of like about our community and our environmental health and runoff and things like that. And so that's the way that it was phrased. And so that's just the legislative strategy. If you need a committee, and it's not always, I think at the state level, it's a little harder, but at the city, there are ways to do it like that.
And now there's no single-use plastic at any food places for the most part.
Yeah, like when I get takeout, it's just so nice. Oh my God. Like before I used to be like, oh my God, like I got lunch here and they gave it to me in styrofoam. Like it just sucked. Yeah. And you just felt embarrassed. I felt embarrassed at least. And now I go anywhere and it's 100% compostable. The straws, utensils. It's not perfect. It actually took a while for people to even start complying, but I feel like now I haven't seen any violations. So it's really taken in effect. And I think the impact of that is huge.
Yeah, we have to change the systems too. And that often comes through policy. And what did you learn? I mean, I know you're a community organizer. That's how we work together, but what did you learn about community building through the Bill 40 journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, one thing that really came to mind was that there are so many forces we had like the Zippies and the McDonald's and the lobbyists that represent these industry associations, come out pretty heavily like in force against. And what was really funny was being someone that had read the bill many times. Like I was reading the bill and I kind of was nerding out on the details because it really does matter at the end. The industry was pumping out so much misinformation. There was articles like that were like, a plastic ban will cause local food shortages and you won't be able to get like any food because they're banning all packaging. And like the bill had never said that. And the intent of the bill and the language of the bill always said this is for takeout. This is just for takeout, like containers and cups and stuff. This is not for grocery packaged food. That's extremely hard to regulate, especially at the city level. So, I think there's just a lot of lies. And I think there's a lot of industry folks that are so afraid of cutting into their profits that they just will sensationalize something and use fear-based tactics to try to get some of the public on their side. And I think what was really cool was that we were able to counter that, and we had just like a lot of support and clear-headed people in the community that really came out and took time out of their work and school and day to support it, and it made it a really powerful movement. But you always have to be ready to counter some ridiculous claims and misinformation.
Yeah, they're industries, like they hold so much of the power in U.S. systems that if you're coming for their bottom line, their profits, there's going to be lobbyists against it. I think we know that all too well.
Yeah, and one thing I just think about is like, okay, now the bill's been passed. It's been like almost 4 years, 3.5 years, and there are no food shortages.
Yeah.
Are no, like COVID was worse like for businesses than a plastic ban. And yeah, like of course there's adjustments that have to be made, but it's been fine. And so I just think I see this happening too, as people are going through campaigns and they're like really concerned about the impact. That remember that that's an industry talking point, and remember that we will always adapt and adjust and prevail, and that the fear of change shouldn't stop us from trying to do the right thing, right? We need to be okay and comfortable that things will be disruptive and things will change, but that those fears are often overstated by the industry and even in our minds.
Yeah. So you did something, I knew you at this point, but you did something really brave and amazing that I think a lot of women will look up to you for, which is that you took all this amazing experience that you had with nonprofits and advocacy and activism and cleanups, and you chose to go freelance and start your own firm. And so could you tell us a little bit about Hawaii Impact Collaborative, and definitely like what made you take that jump? Because I think our generation in general would really benefit from this structure of work. It would help have balance and work on many different projects. And so how did you get there, and like how much experience did you have under your belt, and kind of what made you go there?
Yeah, so at the time, when I left my nonprofit job, I had worked 7 years at 2 different nonprofits, environmental nonprofits. And previous to that, I had a couple of years under my belt at University of Hawaiʻi, working kind of as a part-time activist in different ways. And so about 10 years-ish of work before I made the jump. And really it was about pay, like I just wasn't paid enough. And this is really true for nonprofit professionals around the country and the world. It's just such little pay for so much work. And the expectation is be nimble, do everything, do it for the mission. And yeah, of course, I really believed in that when I was a lot younger. But, when you live in Hawaii, you live in Honolulu, it's the most expensive city in the country, arguably. And I believe everybody deserves to have savings and to be able to save up for a house or to save up for retirement. And with the salaries that nonprofits offer, a lot of times there's just no mobility in that way, and the negotiations don't really go well. It's a very much like a scarcity mindset, and that's not the fault of nonprofits. There's a bigger system at play, like the philanthropic sector, and there's a lot of stuff going on there, right, culture wise. But for me, I just knew I needed to make more money and I had financial goals. I'm going to be the first generation in my family to build intergenerational wealth. I will not be receiving any money from my parents. I have never received any money from my parents. In fact, I send them money every month. And so I think when you're kind of in that, that's your state of being and living and worldview, you can't just be okay getting by on 40 or 50K a year. Like that's just not going to work, especially when you live in an expensive city. And so, being a consultant and going freelance, it was a way for me to, one, like claim my own agency, two, have more income growth opportunity, and three, do what I think a lot of young people want to do, which is work on a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
Not just to work on one thing and be so deep in it and be asked of so much in that one space, but to really have a more expansive relationship with work and like really acknowledge that we all have many passions. Most of us have many passions and we don't want to just be pigeonholed into one thing. And that's what's been really empowering for me is to be able to work on different projects, have income coming in different ways and have them, most of the time be pretty short term and negotiable. And, there's just more spaciousness there and being able to run my own business and have, agency in that way. So there are like downsides, like there's taxes and there's admin and paperwork, but for me, it's worthwhile. Like someone with my personality, it's important to think about it.
Yeah, I agree. I have the same story with nonprofit work. And I feel like you see in people's mid to late 20s, there's like a mass exodus from either nonprofit work or environmental work or activism work, because they just simply get to a point in life where they're like, I can't make this salary work. We're at the ceiling. And like you said, it's not to the fault of one single nonprofit. It's a larger system. It's our funding system. It's the fact that, there's this self-sacrifice culture where you're supposed to just do everything for this cause that you care about. And it's not sustainable for professionals to stay in these positions for long periods of time. And so when I see a nonprofit that has had their team or employees for a while, I always get curious about the types of systems that they have or funding frameworks, because it's something that we need more of. And I know that you are passionate about and work in. And I think that it was the same reason why I left the field. And I mean, I agree with you. It's terrifying. It was hard to know and trust. And you had to, get rid of that scarcity mindset and know like my relationships are going to carry me through. And I really like being able to work on many different projects. I like change a lot. And so being able to say, this was a great chapter that I worked on this one project, and now I'm going to move into something completely different. And that's okay. And we don't have to do one thing for our entire lives. And so, I mean, you've worked on a ton of different projects. What would you say I feel like now, at least specifically right now in 2023, your project quiver is like very, you've got environmentalism, you've got mental health, you've got equity, you've got funding. How do you balance all of it?
Yeah, I mean, what's cool is that in my previous work, I did feel like the teams were too small to do the work that was needed. And that still is the case sometimes now. But I think the ethos in consulting is that you can hire more people to, oh man, we need help with TikTok, right? Or we need help with this, like whatever the little thing is that we need help with graphics. And you can kind of hire those out. Whereas I really found that, at least my experience in nonprofits was that it was, if you needed to do TikTok, you do it. If you need graphic design, you do it.
Yeah.
And, I really prefer, the mindset of like, if you can't do it, like we can hire, or we can try to fundraise, or we can. And so I think there's just more abundance in the space of the consulting world. And yeah, for in terms of balance, I think that's how you do it. It's just the more, I think the types of people that go into consulting are really focused on that mental health and balance and taking space for yourself. And if you're sick, just be sick. And it's just not as much of a robotic, extractive mindset. It's very much like, you get your stuff done and you get it in the time that you have. And that's how we work. It's not as much of kind of like a oppressive, imprisoning work culture. And I think that's really important for humans to feel human and for us to feel free. And I think everyone deserves to feel human and to feel free. And I think a lot of people, stuck in a work cycle, the really like strict 9 to 5, not a good benefit system. They're really stressed out and tired, and they burn out faster.
And then they can leave, and then they might leave the field entirely. And then we lose all of their skills and passions and great additions that, frankly, I think the environmental and conservation field really needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you know that it was time to go freelance? Did you just wake up one day and you were like, this is it, inner knowing, it's time, it's today, I'm resigning, I'm going to take the leap?
Well, I'm really lucky to have had a mentor, and she currently still is a mentor, and is the director on a lot of the projects that I work on. And so she was able to hire me on super part-time for a project, and while I was at my job, and it really kind of gave me a glimpse into that world of like, wow, like I can do this much and make this much money and still have this impact and still be doing great work and be working with women, or a great team, or for this thing that I was really passionate about. And, it was Clarity Project, which is for creating psychedelic access for Hawaii, which has been, a passion of mine for, upwards of 10 years. And
congratulations on all the progress that it's been making this year.
Yeah. It's exciting just to see the movement, not just locally, but, worldwide. And yeah, so I think having somebody like believe in me and have been in the space, and then they hire me to help them, and then I'm able to be empowered and see like, oh, this is a type of way you can work and make money. I think after a while, and then after I like had tried to get a higher salary and it was denied, it was like, all right, well, that's what a negotiation is. And my tactic was to walk away. I'm not going to take a no and just keep making a salary that I know I'm worth more than. And so it was just time. It was clear for a change. Totally.
Yeah. I had a similar thing. I asked for a raise, and it was not great timing. And I knew, because I was in the development and fundraising part of the organization. And I was like, this is a long shot. Right. And then I realized like, actually, I think that I have enough personal relationships in this community and in this space that I could get at least a few things. And I saved up for a few months. And then I remember I was planning on doing it like a few months later, but we had like a really bad meeting one day. And I was just like, this is it. This is my last meeting. And
yeah, you just have a moment and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel this way.
Yeah, I need to respect myself more and like believe. And I'm from a child of immigrants too. And I feel like they've worked so hard for me my whole life. And I don't know, you get to a point where you're just like, I want to create opportunities for them now that I'm older. And I remember you telling me that was like one of your biggest things, because you wanted to help retire them. And it's been a few years. Have you feel like you've made progress towards these types of goals that you had for yourself when you started?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I'm making double like what I was making before. And that's only my first year. It's been just over a year since I made the full shift.
What?
And so I think that is amazing. And I've been able to, help my parents pay for things, send them money, and not to the full extent that I want to, but I'm definitely on that path. And like, for me, it's a huge goal and it's a huge motivator. I think children of immigrants whose parents weren't successful financially and mine weren't, we have that motivation. I'm really grateful for it, actually. Like, I don't feel bad for myself at all. Like, I just think it's so amazing that they came here and they weren't able to get a full education, and they weren't able to advance their careers in any like serious way, but they were able to support us, and they don't have like savings or generational wealth, but they put me in a country where I can give that to myself, and I can give that to our family. And I feel like for me as a child of immigrants, it's an honor, and I'm really grateful, and I'm happy to do it. And I can't wait to support them. And I'm glad that I took the leap financially to be able to be on the path to do so.
I can't believe it's only been a year.
I know. It goes fast.
Well, and it's also like, the best is yet to come then, because if you've seen this much progress and this much confirmation from the universe, whatever you believe in, that this is the path that is getting you to your goals, then like what are the next year or next 3 years going to look like for you? It's only going to get better. For the last few questions, I wanted to ask you, like, how has your activism journey, like, do you obviously see yourself as an activist for the rest of your life, right? As part of your identity. And do you think that your passions and interests will change and evolve, and then you'll be able to have the freedom to work on projects like those? And then if so, what are some projects you've never worked on, but you're really passionate about and you want to get involved in? I know you care a lot about food systems and access and equity and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my number one passion is food systems, particularly like with the vegan lens, and just I feel I have been able to work on it. Like, I have my passion project, Good Food Movement, and we do events when we have time. We do film screenings and food tastings, and it's amazing. And we kind of compile all the lists of vegan eateries on the island every year. And so there's a lot that happens there. And then my work with Center for Food Safety, and they have a huge lens around animal ag and the damage of animal ag on our food systems, in addition to like pesticides. And so kind of the food system as a whole. But I think when it comes to like the top climates, one of the top climate solutions, and in fact, it's probably the top climate solution that we interact with most often, which is our food choice. I do think reducing your intake, your consumption of animal products is a huge first step. It's the first step. And so I'm really passionate about encouraging that in an inclusive way, and doing it in a way that is really showing people it's not a scarcity lifestyle. Like for me, as someone who grew up as a meat eater, and then a dairy and egg eater, and then I transitioned into veganism, I found it's just been kind of a very abundant lifestyle. I eat way more foods. I consume way more nutrients. I'm way more creative in the kitchen. And there's so many options now, ever increasing options at the grocery store and at restaurants and cafes, kind of for all levels of income. And yeah, I'm really excited about what's happening there, in addition to like what's happening in the organic food space, and really bring us in a way where the food we eat does not harm our entire earth and ecosystem and wildlife. Because the way we grow and eat food now, especially with livestock, but like a lot of crops, is in a way that overuses pesticides and relies heavily on industrialization. And so really thinking about what the small scale local organic agriculture look like, and how do we replace animal products with plant-based foods and all of that. So I do see myself moving more into that space. But right now, what I work on is a perfect kind of reflection of my passion. So
passions. Well, and it's all connected too, right? Like if we've got the food system, which accounts for like 30% of global greenhouse emissions, and you're like, well, then my work in environmentalism is deeply connected to my work in food systems and food sovereignty and things like that. Which is great, right? Because we live on an interconnected planet. So with work to protect one is work to protect all, which is relieving in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what I see in the environmental movement is these silos. It's like some people work in energy, some people work in waste, and like none of them really want to talk about each other. And I was always like trying to weave in like, okay, well, let's have vegetarian or vegan food at these events.
Yeah.
Because it's 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. So why wouldn't we? And why would we spend our money on factory farmed meat? And why would we spend our money on pesticide grown food? But there's just this resistance. And I really think that's a Western mindset of like, no, these are separate things. Really look at like indigenous systems and Eastern systems, everything's always connected. And I think a lot of us know that, but to really put that into practice, so if we're having an environmental event for waste, we also talk about food and energy, and we do what we can to encourage all of these holistic practices into all of our work. Because I believe like if we're not walking the talk, really we're being hypocrites. And then I also don't have hope in the future if the top environmentalists in the state and the world, they are like so resistant to having one fucking vegan meal at an event.
Yeah.
I just think that's so backwards and so old fashioned. And so I really see a future, and I see it in the young people where we're really holistic and we understand intersectionality, and we're putting that into practice.
So something that's so awesome about this podcast that we've had for now over a year or two now is it's mostly 18 to 25-year-old people, mostly women, and they are trying to either make this a career or make this a large part of their life if they're pursuing maybe a different professional career. And so what would be, I guess, your biggest piece of advice for that, talking to that group, I guess, when it comes to activism? A lot of them are probably at the early stages of their activism journey.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, that's kind of like college, post-college age. I would say major in something related to the environment. It just, for me, I learned so much in those classes, one, and then, that's just school-wise. And then two, like your extracurriculars, maximize that, like use that time as a college student to get involved, run a club, start a club, join a club, get involved with your Office of Sustainability if you have one, get involved with whatever is happening. Because if I didn't do that in college, I would not have gotten an amazing job outside of college, which was to work for Jack Johnson in his nonprofit, which was like a dream, and so, but I wouldn't have had the experience I needed to be effective and hireable in a role like that without all the volunteer extracurricular work that I did, because I was passionate. But I think, wow, that was actually an accidental investment into my career. And so I really don't just do school, pretty much my opinion. Do a lot of other things, because that's what's going to make you really appealing. There's plenty of kids who just have a sustainability degree, but there's not a ton of kids who are running clubs or doing a campaign or planning events. Like that's a really unique skill set that's going to make you really reputable in the community that you want to work in.
Yeah. I joined a conservation club, and that's for sure the skills that I got there are what made me hireable. No one ever asked my courses I took. No one asked me that stuff. It was all
no one cares. At least in my experience, no one asked my GPA, looked at my transcript, looked at my classes. It's really like,
what'd you do?
Are you hireable? And being a student, those skills, they're not really hireable skills. It's like they want collaboration, they want task management and project management. And you learn that in ways mostly outside of school.
Okay. And then we wrap always with the same question, which is, if you were to put like a message on a billboard that like all the most powerful people in the world would see, the people who are making all these decisions about our communities, about the environment, what would that billboard say?
Oh, that's a hard one.
I know, it's a tough question.
I think like one thing that came to mind was like, live in alignment with your values. Like that's always something that's really big for me, like alignment. Like, are we, if we're compassionate and empathetic and we want, and we care about the environment and we care about future generations, like, are we living every day in a way that allows our values to kind of shine through? So something like that, or something around elections. I don't know what the exact verbiage is, but just, man, like elections really matter. Like fucking vote. I mean, Hawaii has just this horrible voting rate, and people who do vote, they're not educated. It's not their fault necessarily. Like there's a lot of ways we can fix that in the education system and in marketing and a lot of stuff. But man, I told that story about that special election. There's so many stories like that. I've had friends who lost their elections by 40 votes, 20 votes. We've had leaders that needed to be unseated that won by 100 votes. There's just, in Hawaii, it really, really matters. I just can't emphasize that enough. And so this whole concept, like, oh, your vote doesn't matter. Yeah, that's kind of true for the presidential election in a liberal state like Hawaii with the Electoral College. But all of those down ballot votes and all of the votes outside of presidential elections, midterms, all of them, they really matter because Hawaii has such a small voting base and the districts are so small that like you and your friends can just boom, swing it. And the people who vote now, they're over 60. And they are just a different generation, and they're often more conservative and they often don't want change. And so if young people just came in and just did it, it's really not hard. It's so easy freaking mail-in voting in Hawaii. Like I always say, you can vote in your underwear, you can vote in your pajamas, just throw it in your mailbox and boom, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I really I see such a huge, amazing change coming from voting for the right people and new people mostly.
Yeah. We're the largest voting bloc, right? So anything we collectively decide, if we
Yeah.
all show up for it, will pass.
That's the irony of disempowerment.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not true. You can feel disempowered, but the feeling of disempowerment is inherently inaccurate because of the demographics and the statistics around how big our voting bloc is. We just have to show up, and it only takes us 10 minutes every 2 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So and being someone who works with legislators that are great and or difficult, like it would make such a big difference to just have a handful more people in there that were great. And it makes it easier for everybody else too to be great and to live and to work for the people and for the environment. And so that's kind of a vision for the future I see. So something around voting and elections, especially towards young people.
Thanks for coming on. I love you. You're the best.
You're the best. Thank you.